Hi Guido, thanks for accepting our invitation. We're very happy to have you here. Just a few words to explain the format, very easy, very straightforward. I will ask 2-3 questions to just break the ice, and then we will have a mic going around the house for your questions. Please make sure to wait for the mic because we're going to video and audio record this conversation. We will use it also on our Crossing website as a tool to promote these discussions and even further on social media and so on and so forth. Guido, first of all, congratulations for what I understand this is your first long-form feature. Why did you decide to take up this topic, Europe migration, for your first feature?
Yeah, it started out in 2013. I was still in film school at that time in Amsterdam. I was looking for a subject for my graduation film. It was, third year, I think, and I went to Lampedusa because there was kind of graveyard for migrants who died at sea, like without a name. I read an article about it, and I was, somehow it touched me. So I went there. I just bought a plane ticket. But then I discovered that it was still an interesting story, but not for a film. So then I was there at the island, and as you know, of course, Lampedusa is a very tiny island. So I was there for 1 or 1.5 weeks, and then I had nothing to do. And then I met a lot of different migrants from different countries who had the same idea. I also had not so much to do, so we started talking, and then generally the idea developed in the sense that first when I came back to the Netherlands, I was the different power dynamics, as you mentioned in your introduction, kept me busy. And what I found particularly interesting was that at first glance they were completely opposite to each other. They are very different guises of these power dynamics, but essentially they are all the same. And that was for me like the key. Okay, now I want to make this film.
I would like to chat with you and explore a bit about the structure of your film, because I found it very, very interesting and very powerful, the way that you decided to divide into 3 sections. Can you tell us about this process? This is something that was clear to you as you were shooting, something that became clearer in the editing room, and in relation to this, how this process and this structure was informed by your relationship with the main actor in this film, because this film, of course, your vision is there so clear, but I would like you to tell us also about the collaboration. Was scripted? You were a chance to talk to him during the shooting, and
first the structure was like, for me, there were 2 things very important. One was the epilogue. I think for me, the epilogue was actually the most crucial scene of the film. Secondly, it was the 3rd act, where we see the dispassionate bureaucrat handling the procedure with the migrants. But when I was working and writing on the script, then I started in 2014 maybe, and then there was this, this bombardment in the news about, refugee crisis, so-called refugee crisis, etc., etc. And then I became also very interested in the public debate, in the dominant public discourse, and I decided to include this in the film. So the first 2 acts, and that's how the structure actually developed, and the collaboration with the actor was. Yeah, as soon as I decided to tell the story we want to tell, which for me basically, maybe important to mention, I didn't, at a certain point I said I don't want to make this power dynamics visible but feelable, with a very big stress on feelable. And that was for me, I think, like when I look back on it, the key to decide to work with an actor who could really embody a certain voice, which is much more feelable, I think. And we rehearsed about 10 days or something beforehand, and then I wrote like first draft of the script, and then he gave his own ideas about it, and then during shooting, that's maybe more important. It took some time to get him in a certain position, in a certain role. For example, the nationalist, protectionist of the first act. But as soon as I was able to get him in the position, then my job was kind of done, and we got a lot of presents because he started to improvise and he started to make his own, to feel and to make his own story. He was that man at that moment, I think.
Fantastic. And of course, this is a film about power relation, but it's a film about all these people, all these crossings, all these journeys. How did you meet these people? How was the process of identifying these people that then end up in your film? And how was working with them for you, for the actor?
Yeah, there were a few things important for us. One was we wanted to shoot on a location. Eventually we couldn't shoot on Lampedusa, but we needed a location that was very closely located to a school, to a classroom. In the sense, the refugee center should be located very closely. So we didn't have a lot of transport issues, so that we could put all the energy in meeting the migrants and trying first to build a relationship before we invite them for a certain class. But so we were there. It's a very tiny village, Siculiana, and because it's a temporary center, the local community is not really engaged with those people because they stay there for 1 week. So it's also difficult, of course, to get a project started. So when we were there, we were somehow one of the first people who approached them, even who said okay, and then we talked to them, and there were 2 people on the team who were preoccupied with trying to address the migrants and eventually ask them to be in a certain class. So there was we were there for about 30 days, and we shot maybe 5 classes. So like most of the rest of the time, except for the chapters, we spend on just trying to engage with the migrants. Yeah.
And what do you think? How did they feel? I mean, because of course, documentary is always like a slippery tool in the sense that you go there and you are shooting people that have possibly much bigger issues to deal with. Yeah. How do you think and how you felt they were living that experience? And
yeah, it's a crucial but also very difficult question, because I think at the moment we really try to completely get into the heads of those people. The speculation is like attractive in that sense, I would say. But what I can say, I think, are 2 things. One, so the fact that we gave them attention was for them, I could say it was important for them. They even, for example, in the class of the first act, in which the instructor attacks them, we also told them it was an actor, and we really tried to explain the whole film. But still, I think they were generally. It was better that they participated than not, I would say. But still, of course, like you one way, it's documentary filmmaking is an exploitative business, I would say. I mean, it's almost inevitable that because the documentary itself comes first, so to a certain extent you're using the people in front of your camera. And what was also very difficult was that to completely explain like the whole concept of fiction and documentary, and that we were mixing it. Yeah. So although we explained it sometimes 10 times, still it was. Yeah, some were not completely, I think, understanding. Of course, for us is also, of course, difficult to see what's fiction, what's documentary. So yeah, they were not really experienced with film, so that was kind of
challenging,
very challenging, and also sometimes there were some miscommunication. But in the end, because we took so much time, it was yeah.
And before we open up to the audience, I would like to move 1 second on a more political territory. I mean, what was your idea? What was your goal with this film? What you wanted to represent, but more importantly, what was the contribution that you want to bring to this issue of migration? We said this season, is trying to somehow defy these easy labels and categories within which we see these people through meaningless media reportage. Yeah. Of course, this film doesn't dwell on facts because wants to take another approach, but what was your goal, also politically?
I think in that sense, my goal was that to show the audience this is how a part of the world works.
Yeah.
And hopefully to challenge the audience to take a position and hopefully to abandon all the positions showed in the film.
Yeah.
I don't believe that I should then exactly say, okay, this is what you should do, like in terms of a solution, because then
of course
eventually you will just drop to propaganda and moralism, and I don't like that. But yeah, I think it was something like this, just to show this is for what I think how it works, and many people have named the film provocative or controversial, and that I found very interesting because, like, when you just read about it or go to fora, which also inspired me for both the first and the second act, how people talk about the subject, it's even much worse. It's even, but as soon as we see it on a screen and emotion is involved, then suddenly we say, oh, it's provocative, oh, it's controversial. But daily life is apparently that's okay or something.
In a way, like they feel confronted by what they see because that's okay. Is there any question? Yes, there is one just there.
Hi, thank you for your film. I'm interested in why it was in a classroom. Are there classes like that take place, or are asylum requests processed in a school?
No, so it's good to know the classes are it's not a social worker, this guy, or not real classes. It's we created these classes. It was our creation as reflection of the power dynamics or reality or whatever. So yeah, the answer to your question is no. I mean, as far as I know, there are not there are no people who are doing this out of other reasons than making a film.
There is another one just behind there, thanks. And then we're coming at the front here.
So in the third act is about the selection, setting up the questions for those candidates. And at the end, the three were being luckily selected. They will be granted the permission to stay in Netherlands. And for that images, for that three people, and the camera zoom into their face, their reaction. And what are you trying to say for those three images? I didn't get it. Because at the end, three of them were being given the permission to stay in Netherlands, and then the camera just zoom and then for a few seconds, and then to the second, to the third, and then back. So what are you going to say?
Yeah, I know what I was wanting to say. I don't know if it's wise to mention it, but I mean the whole third act was completely based, I would say, on the asylum procedure in the Netherlands. So I researched this for about a year. I spoke with many people, and that last part was for me crucial because that's what I believe happens after the selection procedure with those people standing there. So that's it.
There was a question just here at the front.
Thanks. I really enjoyed the film, and I'm really glad that I saw it. In the third part of the film, the sort of bureaucrat section, it seemed like several people said and did things that would undermine their real-world asylum claims. And I was wondering if you had done anything to mitigate that, or thought about that, or the extent to which you feel like it's an issue.
What you mean, like that we gave them advice or something, or?
No, so I mean, one of a few of them, just as one example, a few of them say that they are not gay, and they might be from countries where they would be given asylum if they were gay, but there's now footage in the public domain where they state that they're not. And if that film didn't exist, they might be able to claim asylum on the basis of their sexuality. Or there are other people where they claim that they have come to Europe for economic reasons, but they are from a war-torn country, and if that film was not in the public domain, they might be able to claim asylum.
Yeah, I've checked that with some lawyers we work with during the process, and they assured me that like this kind of documentary or fiction can never be like ground in this procedure to say, okay, now no, that's what they told me. So I think that's quite safe. Yeah.
Before going back to the audience, I just would like to ask you the very ending of the film, no? This sort of meta-cinema moment. That was a way, I won't hear your opinion, but was a way for you to bring us to reality after a journey, like, through fictionalized dynamics that happen in real life? Or what was the idea behind talking about the distribution, the festival circuit?
Yeah, one of the most important ideas of that scene was that I believe that the documentary should always strive to be self-reflective. So it should refer to its own position. That was the start, and then secondly, in this scene, like for me, the scene in one word is about indifference. That was also how I rehearsed it with the actor, and that's you see the three positions, and maybe a lot of people, some people will say, I'm more attached to the second or the first or the third, but maybe also a lot of people are not attached to any of these positions. And that's, I think, the reason is the answer is the fourth scene, and that's the part where me myself am also quite indifferent. I got indifferent when making this film in this situation sometimes. So that are, I think, the two most important thing of this scene. Yeah.
Was a question there? Thank you.
Hi. The refugees in your film, when they were in their classroom situations, did they conceive themselves as participants, or did they think of themselves as actors? And most importantly, were they paid, or did you compensate them in any way? That's one thing I wanted to make clear.
Yeah, we did compensate them. Yeah, sometimes with money, sometimes with other things like phone cards and clothing, what they ask for. Yeah, and the question, it's a good question, were they participants or actors? I mean, we explained, like in the days before, and also just before we started to shoot, that it was a simulation, that was not real. But at the same time, so that would mean, or that would imply they were actors. But at the same time, what the actor is saying is about their real lives. It's about them. It's not a myth in that sense. So we could all say they're like then participants. So it's a bit, I would say it's hard to define.
Between the lines.
Yeah.
Another question? There is one there.
Hi, yeah, I enjoyed the film, thank you. Following on from the last question, really, I found the interlocutor and the participants very convincing. Did any of the participants think that they were in a real official scenario?
No, no. Generally, I don't think so. Because and if they would think it at that moment, after every class was finished, we again explain them that the whole concept, the whole structure, the whole simulation. So, no, I don't think so.
There's a question there.
I really want to appreciate you for making this movie, and it's really touching, especially the part of Pakistani person. This is really a topic that they raise the issue that there is a Shia Sunni happening, the conflict is happening in Pakistan, but there are so many parts that they can live peacefully. So how did you find out this thing, like the rules about Pakistani people, like?
Yeah, when I was researching it, and we talked to, I managed to talk to a lot of people who used to work for immigration service but quit. So they also give me a lot of confidential information, and I could look into the interviews anonymously. So in that sense, I could get a sense of the rules and of the different cases. So this was based on somehow, it was a case I read before. That's it.
Did you show the film to some of the people? Do you intend to show the film to some of the migrants? So,
yeah, I mean, the ones we have contact with, we send it to them, and actually there was also the migrant in the last scene, one of the three characters. He was just part of our team because he was helping with assembling the classes together with a friend of mine. And so he saw it, and I think 3 or 4 more. Yeah, and the rest, we also didn't have any contact details, so no, they didn't see it.
There's a question just there.
Hello. A very good film. Thank you very much. You said that you became indifferent. Can you comment more on that? And also the 2 different aspects of the first part and the second part. One was very negative. One was saying, look how many are coming over. This cost this much. The second part was the potentiality of an open bordered world. How that contributes to something more positive, that we can actually have a different future. So kind of a negative aspect. More of what's possible for something better.
Yeah, what it was, like I mentioned in the beginning of this discussion, essentially, especially the first and second part, although they seem to oppose each other, they are for me the same. For the very simple reason that both are categorizing the migrants. The first one, they're categorizing as a threat. The second one as victims. But it's both categorizing, so for me it's not really a big difference because they're no complex human beings. And what I try to do, how I approach this, I try to create kind of a visual circle, because where the first act ends, the second begins, and vice versa. And that was for me how I perceived myself, the whole public debate about it. Like 2 parties are fighting each other, and they're getting more polarized, but nothing changes. So it's like the circle; they're just wandering around in circles, and that's, I think, also that's what made me a little bit indifferent.
I think we have time for definitely.
Hi. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. I was interested in your relationship with the actor, the main guy, and the ease with which you felt he had, or kind of, I don't know, like the fun that he had in the different sections, maybe because they were closer to or further away from himself, and as an extension of that, in the epilogue section, kind of him being in the position that the migrants had been in, staging his own reality, but a version of. Like, what was that like, do you think?
Yeah, a good question. It was, well, actually, I don't know exactly why, but it was for him much more easy to play the first act than the second act. maybe you would expect the opposite, but and I talked about him, why is it, and he was saying, yeah, you know, the first act, although it's very attacking and immoral, you could say, it has no hidden agenda. It's very clear, you know. We don't want you here, period. So, but for him, the second act, which is much more, I think, also we tried to get somehow a hidden agenda in it. That was for him more difficult to play this role, and it took some time to get him really in both roles, because like the first take we did on the first act, he was much too giving in to the migrants, so then the didn't really work. So then I talked to him, and then he became more strict. And the last scene was that was actually, I would say he was playing me. That's also how he told me afterwards, that he felt a little bit like this. And there was also the epilogue was somehow a condensation of our experiences we had, because migrants actually did ask us, what are you doing here? And we just condensated it to one epilogue. But also we did different takes. At one point I was also in the scene that he asked me, and I was in the shot, but that didn't work. I'm not a good actor. But also I think just him saying, where's the director, he's hiding behind the camera, that was for me enough, because that's how it is. Yeah, a little bit like this. Did this just answer your question, or?
Yeah. No,
okay.
Yeah.
I think we have time for last question, if there is one. Is that?
Thanks. I really enjoyed the film, thank you. But is there anything you would do differently if you were given the opportunity to do it again? Is there anything you think, that didn't really work, I would do it differently next time?
Yeah, I think a lot of things, but maybe it's better to keep them for myself at this point. No, I mean, yeah, I would.
Well, that's interesting, because we were talking about this actually before, and you said in hindsight you would exactly, like, you know, you were happy with the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, the method,
yes.
like the way we worked, I could do it again, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, but like to give one, yeah, I'm not very convinced of the prologue. I think I would cut it out. For example.
Very honest answer. So before properly thanking Guido, I just want to, if you allow me to remind you of the fact that the season will continue at the ICA on the 12th of July with the Nine Muses by John Akmofra, with a discussion around the film. And we are continuing nationwide in Manchester from Sunday, Brighton, Tyneside, Newcastle, Fact in Liverpool, and we will be showing the War Show. And the director, Andreas Dalsgaard, will also travel with the film to discuss and talk about it. So please share if you have friends and family around there. And we gave you a survey. Would be fantastic if you can help us to get sense of what we are doing, and if you like what you saw tonight, and in general, if you can give us any feedback, that would be much, much appreciated. Please help me to thank Guido Hendrikx.
Thank you. Thank you.